Okay, this is a video on showing you how to get up and running using modx Cloud and Git. Most of this first stuff you won't actually have to do, as you'll be just duplicating the base repo and ending out and creating new clouds, but I thought it's important to show you how I do it anyway. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new cloud, and for this I'm going to call it modx base. To make my life easier, I'm going to add it to London. Okay. Now, what we need to do is open up MAMP. In here, we're going to add a new host. So click plus. I'm going to call this hi.modxbase.dev. I'm going to create a database as well. In here, open up my dev folder and create a new folder. And we're going to call this hi.modxbase. Create and choose and continue. Database name, hi modx base. Let's make it easier to read each other. Create the host. Okay, our cloud has been created, and we have the username and password in order to access our cloud. So in here, now when we go and try and view, hit save, restart our servers. When we try and view this, because we're using a .dev name, it is going to ask for an SSL certificate. So we click this, we should get a connection not private. Open up SSL on MAMP Pro and click SSL. And we're going to create a self-signed cert. Make sure this is filled in and hit generate. I have a folder in my dev folder that has SSL certs. So I'm just going to head and create my self-signed cert in there and hit save. Open up your SSL certificate folder, find certificate, right click, open with keychain, find the one that you just added, double click it, and we're just going to go always trust. Close is going to ask for your password. Enter that in, hit refresh. Now you have an SSL up and running. In my modx base, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that nonsense there. Now that our cloud is up and running, we're going to find the cloud just to make sure that we have the right version. Which is modx base. So our version is 2.7.3 and we're using PHP 3. It is a good point to double check that the PHP version you're using is the same PHP version that is running on cloud. Now we know we're running 2.7.3, so we'll just go ahead and download 2.7.3 from modx.com. And when it's downloaded, we're just going to copy and paste the zip file in here, unzip, and then we're going to bring everything from here into our root and just get rid of those templates. I'm going to create a new directory. I'm going to call site. In here, I'm going to call a directory called db and one called elements. I'll get back to this later. Most of the stuff that you're going to be doing from now on when it comes to working with Git and on local is you're going to be working within this elements folder. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up my elements folder. I'm going to make directory chunks, templates, snippets, plugins. So anything you're going to be creating for chunks or templates, etc., will reside within these folders on your local. Once we're now up and running, we need to go back in and set up our logo. So hit refresh. Can load the modx config file, so we go to setup. It's important that we keep setup on our Git repo, so anytime we bring that into local, we can just run through setup to make sure everything works right. Hit next, new install, next, login name. This is the local host for your MySQL, or you set up with MAMP. It needs to match these details. What was the name of the database we created? It was High modx base. No, it wasn't. It was High modx. Okay. So High modx. Everything's working. Don't worry about this. Just fill in any details here. It's not important because it's going to be overwritten anyway. And helps if you type in the same password. So make sure toggle warnings doesn't show anything. Toggle success. You have the config files, permissions all set up. Next, do not delete the setup. It's important that we have this on the local so we can set up no matter where we are on our local computer. Obviously, it's important that this setup never, ever, ever reaches the modx cloud, as this is a security risk. Go to login, and we can log in using that username and password, but we're not going to. What we're going to do is open up our cloud and open up our details here so we can log in using SQL Pro. So SQL Pro, I'm going to connect to a new account. Connect via SSH. This is going to be connect. That will connect to my cloud database. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export that database. I'm going to add it to my dev folder. modx base site db. And I'm going to make sure it's database, year, month, day, and live, because it's from the live cloud export. at the same time. I'm not letting connection window. And I'm going to connect to localhost via socket because it's easier. And my database is hi modx. What we're going to do is import the database that we have just brought down from live. Open that. Upload that data. Now when we go back to our base, our local version, and hit refresh, we should be able to log in using these details here. Great. Now manage your configuration for our cloud. Is using the same database as our local. And save, close. So we shouldn't actually have to do any work in here. It's all set up and running. And now that we know this database is the same thing. On local, you don't really need to worry about the core folder or the installer present. Obviously, as long as these don't get pushed up to dev, as long as they don't get pushed up to live, and we have security issues here, it's fine. What I'm going to do now is set up the Git repo. So in here, I'm just going to create a new, get rid of all my test ones that I set up. I have created this video a few times. So I'm going to create a new repo. It's under base. I'm also going to push it through to creating a remote repo as well. On my remote, we're going to go make sure it's in the right place. I made digital modx base. Create. Well, doesn't that just suck? At least we have our local anyway. You guys shouldn't have to do this. This is really only for our local. It's only for me. You'll notice that in the core directory, I have a global git ignore file that ignores the core config directory. It's important that the core config directory is not uploaded into your local, as that needs to be regenerated every time you pull down. And it shouldn't go across the modx cloud, as it will screw things up. So in there are username and passwords and directory locations to files, and that will differ whether you're on the cloud or on local. Okay, I need to create a remote now because it's being gay and didn't let me do it. I need 7 remotes. In here, we'll just open up Git and we're going to create a new. This belongs to High Digital. Remote name is modx base. Why did you do that? So then we have our remote as well. Great, so first thing I'm going to do is commit everything and call it fresh commit. Okay, so now we got all our stuff in our remote, and that's all connected up and ready to go. So in our base package, now this is where that was just sort of all setting up. You don't really need to worry about those first steps. That just gives you an idea of how we start from scratch. Now, in order to set up the base package, I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to use one that I created before on the inside creative base package. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be lazy. So we're going to download some stuff to get us started. The first thing we download is ElementHelper. And I'll show you how that works and how we use that for making sure everything stays right in local. PDO. It removed it, didn't it? Had an argument with modx. Okay, we can leave that out for now. That's a different problem for a different day. Whatever. You get the gist. Go ahead, install. The one that I want to install and show you is ElementHelper. Okay. System settings. In here, under ElementHelper, is where we set up the location of our chunks that we created in here. So we're just going to go ahead and update this directory so it becomes site elements chunks like this. You shouldn't have to do this because it should be, once it's done on this base package, it should be done completely. Okay, now that's up and running. To get us started, I'm going to create some new resources. I'm going to click create a do not edit, hidden from memories, and it's going to be Save. And here I'm going to quick create a sitemap. This is going to be empty as well because it's supposed to be XML. And it's freeze URI, so it's just sitemap. Save, and then we'll create another one. I'm going to call this one 404. Use the base template and we'll just freeze URI 404. The reason why we use the freeze URI means that on our sitemap here, this can be accessed directly as our up here. As you can see, I don't have friendly URLs installed, and that's just basically due to HT access. So if I rename this to HT access, and in here settings, obviously this is just setting up the base package, so you shouldn't have to do this after I've done it already. From URL, just yes, yes. Joyce. As you can see, it's no longer /source /sitemap. It's just sitemap XML because we have frozen that URI. It's just a redirect, but it just helps us manage clients to tell them that they shouldn't touch anything within here. Anything else we want to put in there, such as user account areas or checkouts or carts, shit that they shouldn't be editing should go in there. Okay, now that that's done, I want to show you how to sync this with your modx cloud so that everything links up. The first thing we're going to do is open up our SQL Pro, grab our localhost copy, and we're just going to export, and we're going to export as dev. Actually, before I do this, pardon me, I'm going to download one extra because this is one that you need to keep an eye out for. I'm going to download client config. This is a really helpful solution for clients and something that I use across the board. What I probably will do is end up replacing this base package with the Inside Creative base package, as that's already set up with everything installed. But there's a few pitfalls that you need to be aware of when syncing databases and using this extra. So if we refresh, go to our extra configuration. Here we can set up some configs. So this will probably all change, but for now let's just set up communications and create a new one and call it contact email address. Save client view. Now we have communications, and they can enter in their email address and that type of stuff. So this can be customized for clients. And then as you can see with the ++ contact email, that's the system setting that we can use across modx chunks and templates for accessing the variable in here. One last thing before I go is I'm going to update the client config just to move the tabs on the side. Just looks a bit better running down the side. Okay, great. So now we're going to open up SQL Pro. We're going to file, export our localhost. I'm going to rename this one as dev because obviously it's on the dev side. From now on, anytime modx client config is installed, when you first download a database, you're going to want to make sure that your client config, sorry, let me refresh. Thank you. File, export. So when you go to export on client config here, if you've made any changes, so if this is a first pull down from a cloud or a first push up, you should keep these checked. But any additional changes, these must be unchecked, because on the live version, if I'm testing and I have my email address in here, if I push those changes up to the live database, anything in here will have this email address as well. And you don't want to do that, because we want to have everything set up so it matches the client, so we only have to set it up one time in this database here on the cloud and not have to worry about it, so we can have two separate configurations. So let's just go ahead and export that for now. And we're going to import that into our cloud. So let's import. Now when we refresh our cloud, on the left hand it will ask us to log in again. It will have our resources that have not been added, the sitemap, do not edit, etc., etc. We even have our system settings that I set up to use friendly URLs. Everything like that has been ticked. Now you notice that we don't actually have the plugins. I don't actually know how to do, using GitHub, how to deploy. That's something that needs to be looked into. For example, deploying using SSH keys for access control, but that's a problem for a different day. For now, open up Transmit, and we're just going to connect to our new cloud instance, which is here. So we're just going to SFTP into it. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull across a number of files. So in our directory, you want to open up assets, and you have components. So open up assets, and you're just going to throw components across in there, and you're just going to replace. Again, open up core, and in here you're going to throw in your components and packages directories. You shouldn't need to throw in anything else. Just drag and drop it in. And because we've uploaded the database, then the packages should automatically be picked up. So we're just going to apply to all, and we're just going to replace. Ideally, this should be done using deploy, but writing deploy scripts and all that type of stuff, that's a problem for a later date. For now, this is just an easy way of keeping everything in version control, so you don't mess anything up. Anytime you deploy and you're ready to deploy, you put it in here. Obviously, you can have this on a staging cloud as well, if you just duplicate it out. So now we're nearly ready. Once that's updated, we can go back into our cloud, refresh, installer. You see that we have client config and ElementHelper, and they should be accessible to us, but they're not. Just make sure that I didn't jump the gun on that first. So always upload your files before you upload your database. Well, I didn't see that coming. Shouldn't have to do this every time. I just don't know what happened. Refresh. We should have configuration. And it should, yeah, it's put in through my configuration that I set up in my base. There was just some issue in connecting this thing together. Ideally, you should upload your details first. So obviously, I haven't copied everything across. I think we're also going to have to copy across. Anyways, whatever. If anything in connectors ever changes, for example, a new connector is added in here, you're going to also have to upload that to your cloud as well. But for now, that's everything up and running and synced, and everything is now in version control as well. The next thing I want to show you is how we can create base, or how we can use this here. So what I'm going to do is we need to change our methodology slightly in how we work with clients. Everybody should have we should have an uploads media source. And we're just going to create a new directory in here and call it uploads. Obviously, the fact that I've done this once, you shouldn't have to redo it. In here, it's just uploads. Again, uploads. The reason why we're creating media sources is because we don't want to keep anything in the assets folder that that belongs to a user, it belongs to a client. The main reason for this is if they upload massive videos and that type of stuff, you really don't want that in your Git repository. I'm going to confirm that this is working. Uploads, we now have that image. It also means when it comes down to creating template variables and we're using something like images, we just make sure that the media source that they use is the uploads, and that will mean that any template variable that uses an image will upload their images into that uploads folder as well. Just keeps our repository nice and clean. So the reason why we installed ElementHelper was because if we open up in here, let's go to site, elements chunks, or I'm going to create a new template called holding, new file. This is going to be holding template.tpl. Now, when we go back into our templates and hit refresh, ElementHelper will now generate out that holding template. That holding template is now free for you to use, and everything will work. Same for chunks, same for snippets, same for plugins. In here, we can create a Let's quick create a holding page. And we're going to call, you're going to use the holding template, publish and save. Again, what we want to do is just be sure that our URI is frozen to just holding page, save. Now what we'll probably do as well is anytime we have a new client on board is make sure they point to that holding page. So as we're developing everything, whatnot, we can just open up site, see where it says site start. In here, we can just update that to 5. And if we preview site, it should just give us our holding template. And again, now if we go back to our local host and we file export as dev, I'm going to remove these settings. The main reason being is actually what I'll show you is if I update in here, configuration, an email address, and save that configuration. If we open up MAMP, just going to refresh, just export that database, and we're just going to untick these settings. Export. Yeah. And then file, import into our live environment. And then when that's done, we need to go back into transmit. And under our, we just need to pull across everything in sight. The one thing I highly recommend you don't do is pull across the database element. It's important that that's not there, as because anyone can download that and they can manipulate that data or have access to your passwords. So I'm just going ahead, I'm going to remove that from our cloud. But now we have access to the template that we created here. So that's a static. If we go back to our config on our cloud, refresh, log back in. Again, we now have our holding page. The email address hasn't been updated because we have removed that setting from our database, which means that now it means that we can make sure that we don't overwrite any client data here. We now have this uploads configuration as well. So that's all set. And you'll see we also have our site and our elements. So under our templates, we also have the holding category and the holding template. And if we preview the site, because we updated the core settings, we should be able to, system settings, double check our site in here. User site start 5. So we're just going to clear the cache. And we're just going to run a refresh on that. And we got the holding template. So that's basically what we do at Gel to manage our stuff. The only difference being that when you push to master, it automatically deploys the components, the directories across to the cloud. I'm not 100% too sure how to do that using Git at the minute, but I'm sure we can build a deploy script down the line. For now, all you need to know is you can get this set up on your local, make the changes, make the holding templates, make everything you need, and then just duplicate out when you're setting up a new cloud or whatnot. The important thing is that you have your databases are synced by importing and exporting your data, and that all files and folders that are updated are pulled across as well. So that literally is about it. If we go back to source tree, we can see that our client config CSS is now need to be updated, and even the holding template. So I'm just going to go in here and say install of new extras and creation of holding template. I'll push up to remote as well. So now that you can go ahead and start working on that. Great.